Hello everyone, my name is RickChum, and today I'll be teaching you the how-tos of spike planting. Simple enough? Let's jump right into it. What is the spike? Here's my explanation for the spike. The spike is a piece of utility that has the power to bait out enemy utility, reveal enemy positions, cause enemies to over-rotate, boost your team's economy, and win you the round. But if you lose the spike to the enemies, then the opposite will hold true. Your team will be stuck in that crappy situation and not the enemies. It's a powerful tool if you can utilize it correctly, so don't lose it. How do we plant the spike? Simple. If you're planted within a corner, aim into the corner to reduce the area of diffusal. And if you're planting in the open, aim towards an open area or towards your teammate. This way the area of diffusal is more exposed for you and your teammates. Why do we plant the spike? It gives 300 credits to each team member, 1 ultimate point to the planter. After planting the spike, your team will want to defend the spike for 45 seconds, and if your team does successfully, it'll secure your team the round. Why do I emphasize want? Because you don't have to defend the spike. Yes, I understand that defending the spike is the objective, but the spike can be used for more than just defending it with your life. In some situations, you may want to plant for the economy and let them defuse it. It sounds dumb, but if your odds are extremely low, saving that operator or vandal is going to do you wonders, and it'll be much more consistent. Adding on to that, when you plant the spike, you don't get the reduced economy penalty that happens when you lose and don't plant. Where and when do we plant? This is dependent on every situation. Here are some questions you might want to ask yourself. Where are your teammates relative to the planter? Does the enemy team have utility that can stop the post plant? What utility does your team have that can aid in planting? Smokes, Sage Wall, Astral Wall, etc. How much space does your team have? Do you know where the enemies are located? If you've reached the site and the site is clear, feel free to plant. If you have a lot of space on the map, you know where the enemies are, there's no chance for utility to stop you from planting, then plant in the open. It makes your teammates who play in post-plant situations have a significantly easier time taking fights, and there'll be more spots to play in. Though most players plant in default spots, I'd suggest learning planting in non-default spots, as the angles at which the spike can be seen at are significantly less, and the angles at which the fights are taken are also worse. Take for example Icebox A site. The common spot to plant is in this corner, but if you plant more towards Generator or in the open, there are more available post-plant spots, and the angles at which the fights are taken are significantly better. Default spots are not good. If you have the opportunity, plant more towards the open. Here's a situation for y'all. It's Icebox and your team is splits 4B and 1A. You make it to site with the utility you've used, Viper Wall, Sage Wall, and your team has pushed through A, calling everyone to rotate. But you have the opportunity to plant on B. Do you plant the spike or rotate over? If you plant the spike, here's what the situation will look like. It's 4v4 on site, with the 5th enemy coming late. Obviously your A player is on probably the slowest flank of their life, trying not to be spotted. Your Reyna peeks and gets 1, but it dies immediately after re-peeking. Your Jett peeks B main and dies. You're left with your other B player and you're stuck yellow. The last 2 B players are playing some really tough angles, and with the way you've planted the spike, your options are very limited. When you hear the spike diffusal sound, you don't have many options except to swing. So you might be left swinging into 2, possibly 3 enemies. If you choose not to swing, the eventualities will start to swing you. Your flanker is probably screaming into their mic telling everyone not to peek, but sometimes you weren't given that choice. Let's review the other option. Your team has wasted most of their utility and chose to rotate over to A. Might be one person watching mid rotates, and maybe you lose one without trades. Your flanker will probably get 1 to 2 and die, but that space has left your team with an empty site, free to plant anywhere you'd like. So it'll probably be a 4v4, maybe 3v3 post-plant situation, but look at where each player is. You have all the enemies scrambling to rotate through CT, and you have 3 on site with a late mid lurker. The situation is far more favorable than if you had planted the spike on B. If you're asking questions like, okay, but what if my Jett who peeked B main didn't die and instead got the kill? Yes, that does happen. And your situation would be different. But from my over 4,000 solo queue games, this is by far the most common situation. The angles at which you and your teammates peek are not that great, and I don't want to be swinging dry through a smoke into 3 enemies. What I'm trying to get at is, you don't always have to plant the spike when you enter the site. The spike can be utilized in more ways than its intended purpose. Here's another situation. You're in a 1v3 and you get the site for free. You can plant or look for more kills. If you plant, you give the enemies time to group up, wait for utility, and fight together. You let the enemies know your exact location, and you're left trying to make a hero play. This is fine if you don't need the win. Maybe you want to damage their economy or get your ult for the next round. But if you need the round, let's say you're 11 to 12 or in OT, consider the other option. You can probably catch one enemy off guard trying to rotate. From there, you can choose to plant if you feel confident in your odds, or fake plant if you still need the numbers. Just remember to check the time. The less time you have, the less choices you have. If there's 5 seconds on the clock, you have 2 choices. You stick the bomb, or you're swinging. I hope you learned something cool, and thanks for watching.